the cake that I could quit doing these drugs, but I can't and I'm afraid.
I wish that I was smart.
I wish that I was rich.
I wish it wasn't hard for me to grow up and forgive.
I wish that I could help. I wish I wasn't sick.
I wish I was Tom McDonald. I'd be just like him.
I wish I wasn't sober. I miss it when the party wasn't over. Happiness was right around the corner. Every single night was like the best one of our lives. Now we're older. The good old days are out of reach. I wish that they were closer. I wish I wasn't anxious, and I wish I could fast forward. And I wish that I could rewind, but they don't make that controller. I wish the nights were longer, and I wish the days were shorter. And I wish that I could sleep enough to maintain my composure. I feel crazy. I wish that I was normal. I wish that I could kill myself, but also be immortal. Take me to the oracle. I heard that time is borrowed. Can you give me back my yesterdays? I'll give you my tomorrows. Forget all of my morals and just live like I cannot remember sorrow. Before all of the tattoos and the cornrows, I was different, I was happy, I was calmer, I was young and full of hormones. Now I'm wishing for a time machine, I'd step into that portal and be gone.
I wish on shooting stars, or were they satellites? Maybe they were too far. Hey, ooh la la, I must have blown apart a million dandelions.
How we doing tonight?
I wish I didn't care about the day that I'd be buried. Used to live like I was ready for it, always in a hurry. Now I'm worried, all my memories are blurry. I'm just barely turning 30 and the voices in my head are trying to hurt me. The choices that I made make me feel dirty. I was 25 or 13, I was smoking with the seniors, drinking beer and getting flirty. Now the Ativan ain't working, I need something even stronger. Give me childhood, my mother and my father and my sister, and a Christmas to make up for all the recent ones I'm missing while I'm touring the country for a living. Give me a hug and a Nintendo and a toy box in the closet. Give me everything I wish I had.
Hey, how we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Good evening. Welcome to your Saturday night from 52 miles east of Yellowstone Park in Coyote, Wyoming. A few things to unpack tonight. Things just seem to get more stupid and more ridiculous by the day. Let me make sure this thing's turned off so I don't get needlessly interrupted. Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit about propaganda. We're going to talk a little bit about Ike, Dwight D. Eisenhower. When he left office in 1961, he gave a pretty prophetic farewell address talking about the military-industrial complex. And I kind of want to address that a little bit because, I mean, talk about a man who kind of saw what was coming down the pike. I mean, it was pretty impressive, you know what I mean? I mean, not impressive as in what was to come, but impressive that the man saw, you know, what we were looking at. I'm sorry, just make sure everything's off and everything's hopefully sounding good. Hopefully everything's sounding good to you out there. Anyways, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on here that it's hard for everybody I know out there to look at the things that are going on and to kind of see what's actually really transpiring. We have so much grandstanding going on. We have an upcoming midterm election. And as anybody who pays attention knows that when this is what's coming down the way, that you're going to have grandstanding by both political parties. It doesn't matter. You know, there's going to be finger pointing. There's going to be blame casting on different individuals. Quite frankly, I think that most all of our politicians are complicit in all of this that's going on. You look at what's happening in Ukraine, and as I keep saying over and over, the stat is that 84% of the United States population doesn't even know where they would locate Ukraine on a map. So it makes it rather difficult, I believe, for people that don't pay attention to what's happening and immerse themselves and do their homework and look behind what's going on. Like I always say, and I'm going to continue to say it, and I really want anybody out there listening to understand this, that you need to follow the money in any kind of a crisis, okay? Because the politicians are never going to let a good crisis go. And period. That's it. They're going to capitalize. And there's people out there that are going to capitalize on crises, okay? Whether it be speculators, Wall Street, you know. I mean, the oligarchs, the people with significant amounts of money, they are going to capitalize on a crisis. And the reason you're kept to be working your ass off and, with your blinders on. I mean, why do they put blinders on a horse? So it can't see what's going on, right? I mean, there's a reason for that, because the horse is going to get distracted and it's not going to do its job, right? I can't have you not doing your job. There, sorry, I had to turn the old studio fridge off. That thing makes a little noise. Anyhow, they can't have you not doing your jobs, right? You got to have your blinders on, right? You got to be focused. You got to be focused and driven, right? Right down the line. Don't question anything. You just do what you're supposed to do. You're just a cog in the machine. You're just a piece of the whole general scheme of things, and you got to do your job. Don't question anything. You'll get your wages. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry, the cost of groceries has gone through the roof. Sorry, you can't afford to put fuel in your car anymore. They want to talk about the development of electric vehicles. Who's going to be able to afford $40,000 or $50,000 for an electric vehicle? And do you not understand that, although how great this sounds to have electric vehicles, that, do you understand what goes into those? Do you understand the amount of fossil fuels that goes into producing an electric vehicle? Do you understand what goes into mining the lithium for said vehicles, for the batteries? Does anybody understand what lithium is? Okay, any of y'all out there, okay, that I know that a lot of y'all out there, you smoke those goofy little vape pens that you don't know what the side effects of those are going to eventually one day be. You don't know what you're smoking, just like anybody that smokes regular cigarettes. You don't know what's in there. Most of you don't. Most everybody I know that smokes Marlboro Reds, they don't have a clue what the fuck they're even ingesting into their lungs. You know what I mean? Just like most of us don't have any idea what we're ingesting with our food, because we're withdrawn. We are alienated from our source of food. We're alienated from almost everything that we take in on a day-to-day basis. We're alienated from. We don't go out in the backyard and grab a chicken and put it on the block and chop its head off and pluck it and take it in and make chicken fajitas with it. No, that would be cruel and inhumane, wouldn't it? Everybody cringes at that. People cringe at the thought of doing that. Well, what do you think? How do you think you get the chicken? How do you think it ends up on your plate? But you want to withdraw yourself from that cruelty, right? And just pretend like, well, I got it at the store. You know how many times I've heard these people, well, why do you have to hunt? You can just get your meat at the store. Well, what is more inhumane than watching a cattle truck be unloaded at a slaughterhouse and watching those cattle go through those the stockades, it's basically like going down on a ride at Disney World, or standing in line at the movies, or another comparison would be standing in line at the airport. I mean, it's the same idea. Standing in line at the airport and having to give up your bottle of water to the guy on the other side of the rope and watching him put it in the trash can right there next to him and the 20 plus, depending on what airport you're at, TSA agents, under the suspicion that it might be explosive. Now, if it was explosive, or there was a suspicion of your water bottle having explosives in it, and if that TSA agent had, I don't know, the brain of a gnat, and he believed that the reason that the water bottle was going in the trash can right next to him in front of the turnstile, which in some airports you're talking 400 or 500 people in that line, why would he throw that water bottle in that trash can right there? And if you were suspected that that was explosives, now would you not have some sort of detonator? Some way of setting it off? A water bottle? And I don't know how you're going to do that. I'm not that smart, I guess. I mean, I would think there would be a way to do it. I mean, I would think if you're going to have explosives in your water bottle, then there's got to be a way for you to set it off. I mean, if you're going to do it on the plane, you can do it right there, right? Am I mistaken? It's the same type of thing that's going on all the time in this country, and it goes on a day-to-day basis. And we buy this shit. And there went somebody in a nice hot rod. Anyway, this has been going on since 2001. 21 years of this shit with TSA. Now you might say, oh, well, they're there for our security. Okay. Didn't answer me the question I just asked. Why would that TSA agent take that bottle of water if he legitimately expects or suspects that it's an explosive? Your bottle of Dasani that you just got up at the gift shop up the way. Why would he throw it in that trash can right there with everybody? I mean, if you were, say you were planning to somehow have a water bottle, explosive device, and you knew that TSA agent was going to throw it in that trash can, wouldn't you just gladly give it to him and go right on through? And however it is that you're going to detonate that, I mean, and then if there's all those other water bottles that are full of it, I mean, wouldn't that be, I mean, wouldn't that be the way to go if that's what you were trying to do? It seemed to me. But yet we just sit back and we play along with this goofy shit, this security theater. And most of the people out there think that, oh, this is necessary. They're keeping us safe. No, they're not. They miss 97% of the things that people take. And trust me, there are people that are paid to take items through security, through TSA checkpoints at airports, and 97% of them get through there. I know a guy who does it. And he's of Middle Eastern descent. And he says the one time in 100 that he actually does get caught, he says it's a hell of a time trying to settle these guys down. But he said it doesn't hardly ever happen. So he's going through with whatever. And I've done the same thing on accident. I mean, I went on a fishing trip with my buddy Chris back in 2008, and I took my big backpack with me because we were going out on his boat. And in the bottom of the bag, of the backpack, I was just like, I always keep my rain gear down there, and a couple of other essentials. One of those, being from Wyoming, happened to be a canister of bear spray. I didn't think about it. I boarded the plane in Billings, Montana. I flew to Seattle, Washington. We did our week-long fishing trip. On my way back, I get to the airport at SeaTac, and I've got a big white cooler that's got a bunch of smoked fish, fresh fish, the stuff that we had caught that week. So I had a big styrofoam cooler. It was all taped up. I'd gotten dry ice. I'd packed it full of dry ice. And I'm going to get on the plane. And I get up to the ticket counter. And I put the cooler up. That's the only thing I have to check in. I'm just taking my backpack with me. The lady asked, what's in there? I said, well, that's a fish we caught. We went on a fishing trip this week. And she goes, okay, how much dry ice is in there? And I said, well, there's 10 pounds. And she said, well, you can only have 5. And I said, I called your airline before I packed the cooler to ask how much I could have, because I didn't know about the dry ice thing. I thought it might be an issue, so I called ahead. They told me 10 pounds. She said, no, it's only 5. I said, what am I supposed to do at this point? I need to get on that flight. She goes, well, you can go out front and you can take 5 pounds. I said, how am I supposed to measure that? I said, you've got police officers and everything right out front. I said, what happens when I go out there and throw down 5 pounds of dry ice and it's steaming out there and smoking and they're all looking at me? I'm like, you better go ahead and reschedule me for tomorrow. So I got to leave. In the meantime, in my backpack, unbeknownst to me, I have a can of bear spray. And if anybody knows what bear spray is, it is pretty much high-powered, pepper spray. In a big can. I mean, you can get 40 feet out of it. I mean, and it's orange because it marks the bear when you spray it. So I go out. I'm sitting there. I have to call my friend. He has to turn out, come get me. Go back the next day with 5 pounds of dry ice. Go right through. Go through TSA. They take my bag. They do the little swab. Put it in the thing. Right through I go. On the plane. Back to Billings, Montana. get my cooler, no big deal. Get back home, la-da-da, no big deal. Next time I'm getting ready to go out with my backpack, I'm like, where the hell did I put my goddamn bear spray? And I'm looking around in my garage because I used to keep it up on a hook, like, you know, up high enough. This is, you know, when my kid was littler and stuff, and I'm looking around for it, and I can't find it. And I'm looking, I'm like, what the hell? So I get in my backpack, and I hadn't touched the backpack since that trip. And I go down to the bottom, you know, I'd unpack my clothes and toiletries and whatever else I had in there. But I left the rain gear and a few other items down on the bottom, and I pull that stuff out. Sure enough, there it is. And I realized that on that trip, I'd taken that with. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know what would have happened if that stuff would have been like down in the baggage compartment where things aren't, you know, I don't believe, I mean, I guess it's probably pressurized, but you have really cold temperatures. I mean, I know they fly animals down there, so I guess it's got to be pressurized, but it gets really fucking cold down there and shit. And I just wondered what would have happened if that had been down there and it had gone off, because if any of you have ever been around that stuff, I mean, it's nasty. So my point is this. I mean, unbeknownst to me, I go through there with that. But yet, if I'd have had a bottle of Dasani water with me that I just cracked open after buying it at the bookstore, even if I had the receipt with a timestamp on it showing that I bought it like a minute and a half prior, that TSA guy would have made me throw it in the trash can. But yet, I walk right through there with, unbeknownst to me, a can of Bear Mace. Trust me, I didn't want to do that. I wasn't trying to do that. But these are the type of things that I'm talking about here. And so you look at what we can and we cannot believe about what we see on the media. And I'm not in any way saying that what Vladimir Putin is doing is not a war crime. But it is no less of a war crime than what we did in Iraq in 2003. I've watched Bush get up in front of the White House Correspondents' Dinner or whatever they have in front of all the media and joke about WMDs. He even goes so far as to stand there spread legged open and act like he's looking up his ass. Oh, no WMDs there. Are there some over here? He walks over. The press laughs. Everybody laughs. How many people's lives were ruined in Iraq? Yeah, it's okay for us to do that, right? Not justifying what's going on in Ukraine. Not at all. I'm putting some perspective on it. Look what we did in Afghanistan. Look where Afghanistan is today. The same fucking place they were back when we invaded and went in there and occupied that place. The Taliban runs it. Women are way, way worse off. Who knows what's going on there? The military said that there could have been upwards of 9,000 Americans left there. That's a military document. You can look it up. It's not a fabrication. Once again, I don't fabricate numbers. I don't say things unless I've personally verified them and looked them up. Now, if I look up a documentary or a document that's put out by the military and this is what it says, then I feel like I'm probably, if that's out there from the military, then I feel like I'm okay to give that number up, because most people don't look as deeply into these things as I do. And that's that's not being derogatory towards anybody, because I know people are busy and they don't have the time. But this is a lot of what I do. And I try to make sure that everything that I put out there to all of you is factual, that it's correct, and that it's legit. And if it's not, then trust me, I'll be the first one to do a retraction, which the mainstream media, they don't do retractions, hardly ever, unless they get caught so red-handed that they can't help it. But that's the only way out. Most of the time they grandstand, they make excuses. They do whatever, they pander around it. They blame it on somebody else. The blame game, that's a good one. Pointing fingers at somebody else. Well, that's what they do. And so earlier today, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the military-industrial complex, right? And I'm thinking about, okay, what do the powers that be have to gain from this thing going on in Ukraine? Okay, number one, Russia is still getting like $60 million a day from us for oil. So our fearless leader gets up there and brags about these sanctions that we're putting on Russia. Putin's still getting 60 mil a day from us. So we're still buying oil from them, even though we have enough here. We have plenty here. We were independent. We were energy independent. We were until he took over. First order he signs, shut down Keystone Pipeline. Now, it wasn't ever up and running. However, it destroyed tens of thousands of jobs. Not only here, but in Canada. They say that there's all these leases that aren't being used by the oil companies. Well, BS. I mean, the things that he's done to curb the productivity of this country, to curb American jobs, to curb American products, to run a country down. I mean, he wants to talk about, now all of a sudden he's saying we need to fund the police. They weren't saying that. They tried to pin it on the Republicans, saying the Republicans were the ones that wanted to defund the police. Come on. I can pull up a number of videos right now where I can show you, members of the Democrats saying that they needed to, Kamala Harris saying that, I mean, it's crazy, and we believe the lies on both sides. We believe the lies on both sides. I mean, it's not like I'm just saying it's coming from the Democrats, because it comes from both sides. I mean, we get the same thing no matter what, and that's my point, and it has been for some time. All right, let's pull up a little Kamala here, and we'll show you here. All right, let's just blow this up a little bit, and
activists right now are calling for a defunding of the police. The Minneapolis City Council just agreed on a bill on this. Right before I came to tape the show, there was a clip on CNN from a Minneapolis City Councilwoman who said, quote, "It's a place of privilege if someone breaking into your home."
Does Kamala look like she always looks like she's got like a Tic Tac or something. You know how you have like a piece of candy on the roof of your mouth where kind of like guppy. She just looks completely confused. I mean, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I mean, but she had that look during the State of the Union address the other night. It's kind of like a guppy that, like, or somebody who's, just got caught, like when you were a kid, you got caught eating like the cookie dough, right? Your mom catches you and you're like, or you just snuck that piece of candy, like that Reese's peanut butter cup, and you put it like up on the roof of your mouth. That's what she looks like all the time. Always.
Home wants to call the police. This is gaining a lot of steam. Nancy Pelosi this morning just refused to answer if she would support defunding the police. I just want to know from you, do you support defunding and removing police from American communities? And if not, why do you think there's such a hard time being differentiated right now between defunding and reforming police departments?
So, Megan, I think that a big part of this conversation really is about reimagining how we do public safety in America, which I support.
I love the reimagining. Look at that look. She is so, look at that. That's a great still right there. Sorry, I'm going to blow this up a little bit just so everybody can see. I guess I can't really do much with it right now while we're live. Hopefully you can see that. I mean, that look. You can tell so much when you hit pause on an interview with somebody. The hand gesture right there. I mean, the body language. Start studying body language with people, right? Like you can watch my body language. Oh, here I did a hand thing. But my hand's open and it's facing up, right? I'm like, that means I'm offering something up. That's it. When I'm in here and I'm closed in, and or if I'm doing like this thing like Saki does, and I keep saying reiterate like 16 times every minute. No. Okay, let's continue on. And Meghan McCain, she's great. She's just really a peach.
Which is this. We have confused the idea that to achieve safety, you put more cops on the street, instead of understanding to achieve safe and healthy communities, you put more resources into the public education system of those communities, into affordable housing, into home ownership, into access to capital for small businesses, access to health care regardless of how much money people have. That's how you achieve safe and healthy communities. And so we really do need to understand and reimagine what and how we can actually make and help make communities safe.
That that term really that term cracks me up. The reimagine term. So did we imagine things in the first place? Is that what's going on? We imagine things to begin with? I don't get it. What do you mean reimagine? Does that mean that the whole first time we came up with something that was an imagination and we need to redo it? If we reimagine something, then it's going to change? I mean, I would think that we might say something about reconstruct, like reconstruction. Maybe we need to, there's 100 different terms you could use other than reimagine. Reimagine just sounds fanciful. It sounds like we're talking about a Disney movie or something. And look at that look of desperation on her face right there. Just another random click, a random pause. Tell me that's not the face of, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Look at that. She doesn't have a fucking clue.
Because here's the bottom line.
Look at this. Eyebrows raise. When people raise their eyebrows like that. Okay, now she's offering up, hey, I don't know. She's like, your guess is as good as my guess. Here's the bottom. I don't know.
If you contrast, many communities which have a heavy presence of police to middle and upper middle class suburbs in America, you will not see that presence of police. But what you will see? You will see families who have an income that allows them to get through the end of the month. You will see good public schools. You will see people who have access to health care and can afford it. You will see people who have jobs.
Really?
And so this has to be the conversation, which is, how are we going to be smart in achieving what should be?
Now, when she goes and says this, okay, let's get something straight here. Kamala Harris is the Attorney General, proposed arresting parents that are homeless, obviously with homeless children attending public schools who were truant. Her proposal was to arrest the parents, the homeless parents of homeless children who were truant from public school. That was her proposition. That was how she proposed dealing with homeless children who are truant from school. Now, do you think those parents might have something else on their mind? Aside from the drug addiction, and God knows what else goes on out there on the street when you're living on the street. And I can't even imagine trying to raise a child, being homeless. Now, was that addressed at all during the State of the Union? Was homelessness discussed? Was there a budget proposition put forth on taking care of our homeless people? Was there anything put forth on Medicare for all? Was any of this discussed? He sat up there, he grandstanded. She sat there with that confused, guppy look on her face. You see Nancy Pelosi up there when Biden's talking about burn pits that U.S. soldiers are having to stand around and inhale the toxins from. And she's standing up behind him with a big smile, and she's doing this. What is she doing? That's why I'm going to start referring to her as Campfire Nancy. Sorry, I'm going to move my camera just a little bit so I'm out of the way. I mean, I see her as Campfire Nancy. I mean, what was this? She's standing there, she's got that maniacal grin. And who does her makeup? Whoever does Nancy Pelosi's makeup, hey, you know what? You got a strong future in Hollywood. I'll tell you that right now, straight up. Because with how much shit you got to put on that, I can't imagine what it takes to get that shit off her face at the end of the night. I mean, it's got to take a damn, I don't know, like a Bondo spreader or a big-ass drywall knife, putty knife. I don't know if they dip her in a, you know, I don't know, an acetone pool or something like that. I mean, because that woman's 80 years old. And if you saw a picture of her on that night at the State of the Union, and watching her stand up and clap and sit, and then she did that bro dap handshake with Biden at the end. You see that bro dap, like, you know, I mean, like, you know, geriatrics must unite. I mean, that's pretty crazy. We got Biden, okay, leader of the free world, supposedly. I don't know how much longer it's going to be a free world. I don't think it's a free world right now, as a matter of fact, because, quite frankly, anything that I say right now can be shut down and taken off. And it has been. I've had to do appeals. I've had to do everything else because I'm just speaking the truth. So there's number 2, right? Number 2. With that air right there. Number 2. I got to go backwards here. Number 2. That's number 2 right there. Number 2 in the free world. Pelosi, number 3. That is a scary proposition. Could you imagine Nancy Pelosi leading the show? I mean, she kind of does already. Her and Chucky Schumer. Oh, boy. I mean, it'd be just as bad if you were to put Mitch McConnell out there. I mean, it's, you know, and then you got people like, oh, my God. I keep seeing interviews with that Eric Swalwell. He's banging a Chinese spy, and yet for some reason he's still got a political position in this country, and he's on the news. Why do we let that happen, folks? We sit back and we do nothing, and we let this shit happen, and we complain, and I know it. I complain too, but you know what? I'm trying to get it out there to all you as well. I mean, you know, because I mean, I'll tell it to anybody. I don't care. I send emails out every day to people in power and people in positions, and I don't hear anything back, but I keep sending them. You know, I mean, what am I going to do? Go out there and parade somewhere? I mean, the Department of Homeland Security has already said that their number one focus is domestic terrorism from people who are providing mal or misinformation on the internet. That to me is ridiculous. And then they've started up this whole thing, this CISA, C-I-S-A. And you can take the training and tell on your neighbor. It's what they're doing. It's the same thing that the Nazis did. The same type of thing. I have to go get my new driver's license this month because it's my birthday. And it's going to cost me $35. And now I get to get what they call a real, capital R-E-A-L, ID. Now, without that real ID, I can't fly a domestic or a foreign flight. Now, I don't think I'm ever going to get on an airplane again anyways, tell you the truth. I don't really want nothing to do with it. I kind of like being here in Cody, Wyoming, to tell you the truth, because you know what? It's, although I do miss seeing my friends in the cities, and I miss going to, to cities for the amenities and there's, more of a choice of restaurants, better restaurants. You've got concerts and sporting events and, different cultures, different people. Sometimes you're on the ocean, just different experiences. I mean, every city's got its own kind of flavor, and I do miss that a lot. Because before November 19, I traveled quite a bit. I mean, the last trip I took was right before things got cuckoo in 2019. And, flew out to Milwaukee and saw my favorite band, The Boys, for 3 nights. Got back, and right after I got back, everything just kind of went willy-nilly, And it has been for, now you're looking at 2.5 years. And finally, people have had enough. And they get up and they grandstand on that. They take credit. The Democrats take credit for that. Biden was handed 3 vaccines. Now, Trump's been all behind the vaccines. I'm not going to even really talk about it. The fact of the matter is this. The vaccines, while eliminating the severity, you can still catch the virus. You can still transmit the virus. At this point, I think the American people have had enough. I don't know if you're with me or not. I've had enough. And I live out here in the middle of Wyoming where we really have not had much of an effect from it. I mean, we did a little bit during the summer, and a lot of people got it. I've had it twice. I've had it twice. I mean, and who knows about the unicorn? I may have had it already. I may not have, because I have immunity I've got a pretty well built up immunity. Naturally, I have a built up immunity. Not naturally, being that it's a man-made virus. So I guess having an immunity to it's not really, if you trace it down, it's not really natural. Because Fauci funded the Wuhan lab. Now, I don't care what you have to say. That is the truth. It's the truth. I mean, even if it was through EcoHealth, you can trace that down. You can follow the money, and you can see that. And YouTube, you going to tell me that I'm putting out misinformation, then go right the fuck ahead. But I'm not, because it's out there. And it's been proven, it's been shown, and the documentation is there. The money trail is there. That's taxpayer money from the United States that went to that lab to fund what has been our demise over the last 2.5 years. And we had everything going. We had real unemployment at an all-time low. Now Biden comes out and talks about 4.5% unemployment, whatever he's saying. But the fact of the matter is that the unemployment has decreased because people have been going back to work. The unemployment numbers were low because under the tutelage and the guide of that tree gnome, that little squirrel head that we haven't really heard much from recently. Have you seen anything from that guy? It seems like they've kind of switched the shift from the virus to something else, because I don't know when the last time was I saw the cookie gnome out there. Have you guys? I mean, there were people that had Saint Fauci masks. Saint? This guy has been in the middle of every single potential pandemic and mishandling of such since the late 70s, and the first big one being in 1984 with HIV, which was completely mishandled. And completely put out there as something it wasn't. It was put out there as a gay virus, wasn't it? Anybody remember 1984? I remember. I was 8 years old and terrified. I remember hearing about it, and that's what you were told, and we didn't have any choice. Back then we had those TVs where you had to get up and you had to get up and turn the knob, going off rabbit ears and shit. I mean, VCRs were like $500, top loading. I mean, I remember my dad getting one, and that was the most amazing thing. And it got so wore out that it'd be like every 10, 15 minutes, the thing would start tracking all weird. You'd have to get up and, like I said, set something on top of it, hit the rewind, not to stop rewind, but just the rewind scroll, just to kind of tighten the tape up a little bit, and then hit play again. So you'd have to go back 20, 30 seconds, hit play, sit down. I remember my brothers and I, like all three of us, we'd sit there and it would be like it'd rotate around the room. All right, it's your turn. Next, you have to get up, put whatever back on top of the tape loader, So Fauci's been involved in this shit since 1984. And we didn't have anything else to believe that. I mean, we didn't have, we had Encyclopedia Britannica. We had Funkin' Wagnall's Encyclopedia, and we saved up and we got like one issue of that like every month. So we didn't have to go to the library because that's how you used to have to do shit. When you had a paper to write, or you had to go to the library. You had to know the Dewey Decimal System. How many kids know the Dewey Decimal System? Nah. My kid doesn't even know what a he doesn't even know what a CD is, much less a VHS tape. I mean, a rotary phone, answering machine. I mean, come on. So we got our information back then. I mean, you had to believe what you saw because you'd have, like most people had, 3 or 4 channels. And if you did get cable, boy, you were something else. I mean, I remember when we got the cable, it was like, But you still only had your major news sources. You had your Dan Rathers, your Tom Brokaws, and then along came CNN, and you look what it all is now. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And we sit here and we watch all this crap and we take it in and we believe it. It's propaganda. So much of it is propaganda, and it doesn't matter what side of the table that it's coming from. It's propaganda, and it suits those in power. I got on earlier to look at, a good thing to look at it if you're in any way interested in economics and the market. If you look at what the stock market does after hours and during the weekends, after hours trading or pre-opening trading, as they call it. I don't know why they wouldn't I don't know when it becomes pre-opening or after hours. It's the same thing. But when you watch those numbers, so I was looking up, some of the military industrial complex companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Grumman. I mean, you've got all sorts of them out there that are, that stand to gain from this, okay? I mean, and Chris Hedges, it was from Friday. He did an interview, and he talked about, and Chris Hedges has been in the middle of wars, as a journalist, and I consider him to be a very, very credible source. And he's very concerned, and he's seen a lot of things, and he's talking about what's going to happen here. I mean, we're trying to allocate. And I can't remember what the number. It's like another 65 billion or something like that. After we've already given the Ukraine $1 billion in military aid, and we're going to keep pumping that country full of weapons, and that's how we're going to change this. I made mention the other day, and I'll tell you right now, I made a mistake on even saying it. It was just something I threw out of left field. I said, well, hey, if we want to stop things happening in there, why don't we make it a no-fly zone? Well, I didn't think about what happens when Russian fighter jets start getting shot down. And like Hedges said, I mean, he says he fears that, and for him to say this, I'm going to put a lot in it. He says he fears that what Putin's going to finally do, he's going to have enough, and just a lot of people are going to die. And I believe he's a psychopath. I don't think that Vladimir Putin is a good dude. I'm not even, it's like, that's the problem though, is when a person stops and actually just looks and throws ideas out there and thinks about, okay, when you start to think about these things, and you look at it from each side, you think different things, like you think, well, maybe this, okay, what's his motivation, right? You look into it, okay? And I see his motivation is this, and I could be 100% wrong because, I don't know, but I tell you what, I've done more homework than the majority of people out there on this thing. And here's the deal. NATO, we made a promise to Russia that NATO was not going to encroach on them, okay? That's something that Russia is obviously very concerned about. They don't want missile bases from NATO, military bases from NATO right there on the Ukrainian border. I mean, they've in effect already annexed the Donbass. I mean, I was going to say Khrushchev. I was sitting here thinking about Khrushchev and JFK during the whole, Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, it was something else. And then you talk about, you had oh God, what was it? The project, it was named after the bird, not magpie. I've got it in my notes somewhere. Anyway, you had Operation Northwood, which came out, you had Project Mongoose, right? This is when Castro basically took over. And, they'd taken Batista out, who Batista was backed by the U.S., by the way. I mean, this has been going on with the United States forever. We've been backing and usurping and overthrowing and putting who we want in power in places forever, so to sit here and talk about Russian collusion in our elections is absolutely, it's almost laughable. For this country to sit there and say that Russia interfered in our election is, because of what? The Jesus memes on Facebook? Who bought into that? Come on. You're going to vote for Hillary, you're going to vote for Hillary. Straight up. There were not a lot of people out there that changed their fucking mind during that whole debacle. Then you got Hillary, she's calling out the violation of Article 33 of the Geneva Convention, and she's actually advocating punishing Russian people. A lot of Russia is not behind what's going on in Ukraine, believe it or not. A lot of the soldiers that have been captured and interviewed didn't even know what they were doing. They were just following orders. Some of the biggest atrocities that have ever happened in recorded history of mankind have been done under the guise of following orders. And I've talked to a lot of people that I know that are ex-military, and their standpoint is still, you just do what they tell you to do. I understand loyalty, but you know what? When something is screwed up and they tell you to, when Nazi Germany's telling those Nazi soldiers to inflict genocide upon the Jewish people, and you do it. It's one of those situations where you have one man, old Hitler and his homeboys, and you've got a whole military full of, this is what happens when you don't teach young people to think critically. And that's what's going on today. Young people are not being taught to think critically about this shit. They're being taught that there's only one way to look at it, and it's from the liberal democratic side of things. And that's it. They're not being taught. And I went through the same thing. I had to reprogram my thinking. And I went to college in the mid to late 90s. And there was a lot of that stuff that I had to sit back and reprogram my thinking and go, whoa, and look at what I was just force fed and what I believe, because you look at these people, right? Especially when you're in college, right? You're paying for that education, right? You know what I mean? You're going into debt over it. So you're paying for it. And so you think, as a young person, especially, your mind is very malleable at that point in time in your life. When you're under 25, the human brain doesn't fully form until about 25 years old. That's why it is dangerous for youth under that age to partake in heavy drug use, because your mind is not it's not fully functional, it's not fully formed. But so you're at that age, right? There's a reason why they want to send you to college at that age, because they can inundate these kids, and you just buy into it. You buy into it because growing up, you go to see your high school counselor before you get out of high, they're like, well, what do you want to do with your life? And you're like a 17-year-old kid, you're going, I can hit a ball with a stick. That was me. The only thing I wanted to do was get out of this town, and because I could hit a ball with a stick very well, and I could throw that ball pretty goddamn fast, I managed to get myself a scholarship to go play baseball and get out of here. And that was the biggest thing I wanted to get out of this town. I wanted to go out, and I wanted to see more of the world. I wanted to see what was out there. When you grow up in a small town, that's what you want to do. I can imagine when you grow up in a big city, you would hope for the opportunity to be able to maybe get the hell out of there, I just guess. There's always the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. So anyway, yeah, Hillary was talking about how, basically punishing the Russian people would be perhaps the only way to get through this. Now, I don't even know why she has a voice in anything right now. And I hesitate to see what's going to happen if she throws her hat in the ring in 2024. My advice to everybody for 2024 is just don't vote. I know it's not going to happen. And it wouldn't matter anyways, because even if not one single citizen of this country voted, we would still get stuck with, as South Park says, either a turd sandwich or a giant douche. And it doesn't matter because the president doesn't really matter because they're not really doing anything. Do you think Joe Biden drew up all those executive orders that he signed? He didn't drop any. He was lucky to make it to pudding time that afternoon. He talks with a mouthful of applesauce. He eats soup and ice cream, pudding, takes naps, falls asleep at huge global, at climate conventions. Farts in front of the Duchess of Cornwall, the long fart. She said it was the longest, most disgusting thing she'd ever heard. He doesn't matter. He's inconsequential. So bitching about him, while it's funny and it's low-hanging fruit, which it is, I'll admit it, and my jokes about him are low-hanging. It's really easy to do. It's just like it was easy to make jokes about Trump. It's actually probably easier with Joe Biden, especially, with Kamala. So anyway, let's go back to what she's talking about with this funding the police. I'm sorry, I digress all the time. I get going, just got the gift of gab.
Our collective goal, which is that all communities are safe, and knowing that safe communities are usually safe because they are healthy because of a number of things, including the economy, including education, including access to health care. And that's how I think about this. In many cities in America, over 1/3 of their city budget goes to police. So we have to have this conversation. What are we doing? What about the money going to social services? What about the money going to helping people with job training? What about helping with the mental health issues that communities are being plagued?
What about, now this is a crazy thought, what if we stopped sticking our nose in the middle of the business of everybody across the globe? What if we stopped playing world police? Because you, ma'am, are second in charge of the largest global police force on the planet. Nobody votes no on that, do they? How much more did they increase the military spending budget by this year? Answer me that. Damn near $1 trillion. She don't have any problem with that. None of these Democrats, none of these liberals have any fucking issue with that shit. They don't care. They are all behind it. When it comes down to it, when they bitched about Trump, saying Trump was a psychopath, and how can we have a guy like Trump, have the keys to the codes to the buttons and everything? He's going to start World War III. Well, guess what? Here we are. World War III may have already started, unbeknownst to us. It may have already began. And who's got the keys to the button? Who's got the code key? Who's the one? Her boss. The guy that doesn't even know what the Declaration of Independence is. The guy that called Ukrainians Iranians during the State of the Union address. He called them Iranians. She cringed. That was the only point of emotion I think I ever saw out of her the whole time. Everybody else just straight-faced took it. Bobard down from Colorado, she gets bitched out by everybody because he's talking about the burn pits, and Pelosi's sitting there doing Campfire Nancy, and Bobard says something to the effect of, what about the 13 that died in the suicide bombing, that including a young man from just across Yellowstone Park from me in Yellowstone who had, was on his way back from Germany because he had a baby daughter, and and he'd been stationed over there, and they got subverted and ended up there in Afghanistan. So this young man, he's coming home after his service in Germany. Coming back to see his wife, his new child, gets diverted, ends up in Afghanistan in this mess that these idiots were behind. His daughter's going to grow up without a dad. He never got to see his daughter. They didn't say a word about that. But then Biden, fecklessly, as always, after Bobart says something about the 13, all of a sudden it's like he switches gear and he brings up his son, which he always does. Now, I'm sorry that he lost his son, and I'm sure his son was a good man. I don't doubt that. And it's always a tragedy when a father outlives a son. I'm not going to take anything away from that. I'm not going to be cold-hearted like that. But I think that he's used that a lot of times to grandstand, and he's used it a lot of times to gain sympathy. He's used it when people have brought up arguments against him that he can't refute. He brings that up, and I don't think that's a very good representation of his son. And quite frankly, I don't think it's what you want to see from a leader. If somebody calls you out on something, that's not how you go about. You don't bring an emotional subject into it. If you're the commander in chief and you're the one behind the 13 Marines that died that day, if you're behind all those people that got left, if you're behind the fact that the Taliban is one of the strongest armed militaries in the world right now because they basically got Bagram Air Force Base and they got $90-some billion worth of military equipment, most of which they probably don't know how to use. And a lot of it, I would imagine, fell into Iranian and Chinese hands. I could be wrong. That's speculation, but looking at where that base is and looking where Afghanistan is in relation to those two countries, you know, and then you look at Iran. I mean, we've got this big problem with Iran. Well, who the fuck put us in the situation there? It goes back to 1953. We were meddling in Iran's elections and Iran's leadership. And why? Because of oil. We've been doing this for a long, long, long time. And this is why I say you should really trust your government. Because let's look back at some of the great things that they've done. Okay, I've got a list here. Let's go back here. Let's look. Okay, now, excuse me. I just dropped one of my cards. Now, let's talk about swine flu. Okay? Now, most of you think that was an occurrence that happened, if I remember right, around 2007, 2008. But no, the first case of that was in 1976. And that was under Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford, one of the most intelligent presidents that we ever had. You ever see The Simpsons with Jerry Ford moving across the street? It was one of my favorite episodes. It was called Two Bad Neighbors. And George Bush, at the beginning of the episode, had moved across the street. And Bart just starts terrorizing him. And the whole conflict, I mean, Homer's pissed off because Lenny and Carl and the neighborhood guys, they all want to hang out with Bush, right? So he's pissed off because Bush is out doing his morning jogs. And everything. There they are, sucking up to Bush, you know. And so Bart ends up going over, and of course he meets Bar. And, you know, Bar takes him in to meet George. And George is writing his memoirs, and he's got like an outboard motor out there wherever he's writing. I don't know if it's his garage or what. The episode's called Two Bad Neighbors. Absolutely hilarious. One of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons ever. I mean, absolutely hilarious. But at the end of the episode, Jerry Ford, after, you know, they start a fight. And there's one where Homer and Bart, there's one scene they're standing out in front, and they've got a cardboard cutout of Jeb Bush and George Bush. And Homer knocks on the door and steps back, and George Bush is looking out the eyepiece, you know, the peephole. He's like, Bar, come up here. The boys are visiting, you know. And Homer's out there. He's like, hey, George Bush. It's your sons, George Bush Jr. and Jeb Bush. And George Bush comes out, and Bart's on the roof, and he like takes a thing of like crazy glue and sops him in the head with it. And they slam dunk a clown wig on him and take off. And then, you know, Homer and George end up in a fight.
Hello,
That's pretty
Mr.
hilarious.
Bush. Cool. What does this do?
Now, don't you pull that cord, young man. No. Hey, Bar, my motor's gone loco.
I did it.
An imitate?
I'll keep going forward in it. My bad. have to get back out of here. That was pretty funny stuff, though, man. But Jerry Ford comes on at the end. And he goes walking up to Homer, and Homer's like, President Ford. He goes, Homer, do you like beer? Do you like nachos? Do you like football? Here we go. I'm going to bring it up right here. Just make sure I got it set up right before I hit play. I'm bad at this. I got to do all this myself. So you have to excuse the fact that I'm an idiot with all this. It's not really my forte, but this is hilarious. So anyway, this is just related to what I was telling you about the whole thing with Gerald Ford. All right. Well, that's not it either. God damn it. Back to the start. Okay. So this is Homer and Gerald Ford. This is after they wrote George Bush off. Mr. Doe.
Hi. Pleased to meet you. I just moved in. My name is Jerry Ford.
Former President Gerald Ford? Put it there. I'm Homer Simpson.
Say, Homer, do you like football?
Do I ever?
Do you like nachos?
Yes, Mr. Ford.
Well, why don't you come over and watch the game and we'll have nachos. And then some beer.
Ooh. Jerry, I think you and I are going to get along just...
You gotta love that. I mean, that's awesome. So anyway, 76, first swine flu. Sorry, my mind goes all over the place, so I had to bring it back to that Gerald Ford thing. I was thinking about that after that whole deal. So 76, you got the first swine flu. They fast forward, they push through a vaccination, and a bunch of people end up getting another disease from the vaccination. All right, you know. So there's a good reason to trust your government right there. Okay, and then we had Operation Northwoods in 1962, and JFK was president, and the whole thing was about false flags because of Cuba, right? We had thrown everything out there on the table from, they wanted to take a flight full of like high school students and then have like a drone passenger flight that was exactly the same, fly up along with it, have the passenger flight drop down under radar to where no one could see it, fly back to Ingalls Air Force Base, and then shoot down the unmanned flight and tell the American people that the Cubans had taken down a passenger plane. Okay, that was one thing they wanted to do. They actually did take out a naval ship that caused a lot of shit. They had so many things on the table. So this is, I mean, you know, they were just looking out for us. Trust your government, people. That's another reason why you should, because they were willing to go to that length. And this is, you know, this is back in 62. But, you know, thankfully, JFK said, no way. What happened to JFK? I'll have to look into that one. Weird. He bucked against that one too. What did ever happen to that man? Odd. He had a girlfriend too. She was in movies. I wonder what happened to her. Weird. You know, some other things we can think of. Let's talk about the war on drugs. There's another great reason to trust your government, because you know what? They wanted to keep young children off of drugs. They certainly did. Now, they didn't care necessarily about young children in, you know, the impoverished areas of the country. You know, that was okay. You know, and it didn't really matter that much anyways, because, you know, we had the whole Iran-Contra affair going on. You know, I mean, you know, we're flying weapons down there and meddling in South America. It was when Barry Seal started flying up, you know, God, tons of cocaine and weed and, you know, whatever else. Gets caught in Mena, Arkansas. And you know, who let him go? There's that one guy. The one guy that didn't have sexual relations with that woman. Who was that? That was the governor of Arkansas at the time? When Barry Seal got caught? I'm trying to remember. First, it was William Jefferson something. His wife tried to run for public office recently. I'm trying to remember. Another reason to trust the government? He had to let Barry Seal go because Barry Seal was doing the bidding of the CIA and it was helping us all. You know, I mean, come on. It just, the list goes on and on. What else can we talk about? Well, you know what? During that whole war on drugs, too, we sprayed 8% of Colombians' farmland with Roundup. Roundup that's full of glyphosates, which I don't know what they cause something called, it's the same as the Tropic of Cancer. That's it. Causes cancer. Oh, and wait a minute. They put that stuff in the Monsanto genetically modified food that we eat. Oh, wow. They're just keeping the parasites and the bugs and everything away. It's another reason to trust the government. I mean, Bayer, Monsanto, they don't have any lobbyists out there paying off politicians. No. Our politicians wouldn't accept money. Why would they do that? Why? Trust them. You elected them. They're there to represent you and me. Trust your government. Especially this government. They just, I mean, Fast and Furious that went on. Hey, you know, no big deal. It was a movie, right? Vin Diesel, unfortunately, Paul Walker passed away. That was a really sad thing, but yeah, Fast and Furious. Happened under Obama. No big deal. Trust your government. They had our best interest in mind during that whole thing. The whole thing. You know, El Chapo ends up escaping. Who knows where he's at now? He's probably in a Pablo Escobar type prison, you know. Yeah, Jesus Christ. You know. I mean, absolutely insane. You know, I mean, we look at Libya. I mean, you know, come on. You know, we came, we saw, he died. Now they sell slaves in the street in Libya. It's fine. It's the government looking out for you. Same with Syria. You know, Assad chemically gassed his own people. And that one reporter from CNN went over there and she sniffed the backpack and swore there was something funny in it. But nothing happened to her, but she could tell it was something funny. Now to me, if you're talking about chemical warfare and poison gas, and you stick your nose in something that's been covered in it, I don't think you just go on with your report. I don't know. I could be crazy. But see, that's where you got to trust your government. You got to trust the media because they know. They know. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. You just have to watch what you see on that TV. And anything that's on a Facebook meme or an Instagram joke or a TikTok video or crap chat or whatever else, trust it. It's all legitimate. If you see it on YouTube, it's 100% right on the money. You can't question these things, and you have to trust the government. Especially when like outfits like YouTube and this and that, you know, you can't put out misinformation because if it doesn't coincide with what they're being told that the government doesn't want out there, then you shouldn't listen to it, you know. Joe Rogan, terrible individual. The man only has long-form conversations with people from all different backgrounds, be they, you know, anyone from, you know, Dan Crenshaw to, I mean, God, he supported Bernie Sanders. I mean, geez, talk about a fascist. I mean, he even had him on his show. I mean, come on. He never had Hillary Clinton on his show, did he? Jeez. I mean, You know, he has people from all different walks of life. Had Andrew Yang on there. I mean, what a racist. You know, and then, I mean, he was taken out of context, you know, quoting what somebody else had said, using the word that I would never say, but he was quoting somebody else who was on his show who had said it. Probably shouldn't have done that. But, you know, I mean, that just makes him, you know, he's a racist right-winger, even though he believes in, you know, Medicare for all. He's never voted for a Republican. Oh, and he took ivermectin from his doctors when he had the goddamn thing, the virus. And that's a racist medication. Didn't you know that? Because we've given 4 billion doses of that to people in Africa to battle different parasitic diseases. But it's a racist medication. And if you take it from a doctor that prescribes it to you, like I did, you're a racist. So I guess I'm a racist now because of the ivermectin. Who'd have thought? Crazy. I didn't even ever think of that I'm a racist now because I took that, and here my best friend is a black man. Boy, I guess I better shape up. So there's another reason to trust your government, you know, and Hillary's coming out there wanting to starve out Russian people. You know, I mean, that's great. Good for Hillary. Good for her. Getting it right back in there. I mean, you look at all these things. I mean, we gave black people syphilis and acted like we were treating it, even though we had the medication to treat syphilis at the time, but we just wanted to see what it was going to do. You know, it's a trust thing. Just black folks. No big deal. 1907, we, up until the 60s, I believe that this was I believe there were 60-some thousand people in this country that were sterilized by the government. We put into effect a sterilization program for people. Others might call that eugenics. Others might bring up, oh God, what was her last name? Stanger? What was that outfit that she started? It started with a P and ended with parenthood. I don't think there was anything to do with eugenics there, was there? Did Jeff Epstein have anything to do with eugenics? I don't know. Who would know? Who would look into something like this? You just trust what they tell you, people. That's all you got to do. You got to put your trust in them because what they tell you is legit, and it's 100%. It's 100%. You got to listen to these people because they're not going to lead you astray. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, trust your government. You know, we got the opioid epidemic. You know, hey, trust your doctor. You know, you got a little pain going. Hey, take that OxyContin. Just take it. And it'll be fine when they pull the prescription from you and you're now an addict and you go and you get street heroin and you turn into a junkie. It's you know, it's not Big Pharma's fault. It's your fault. You're weak. You're weak. You started taking one of the most addictive substances ever developed and you know, these families have made billions upon billions off of it. Trust your government. Trust them. They know what's best for you. And keep voting. By all means, keep voting. And vote for a different candidate from a different party every other year, every other election cycle. Because that's really going to fix it. Because as we've seen throughout the years, it doesn't, you know, it matters so much whether we have Democrats or Republicans in there. It does. It makes such a big difference. When are we going to wake up? When are we going to walk away? When? If not now, when? I mean, our lives are short. Is there a good time for it? You know, there's never a good time for anything that's difficult. There's never a good time for it. You can push it back. You can put it off. You can oh, well, you know, like they talked about the whole force the vote thing. What's the squad do? Nothing. They stand with Pelosi. They don't do anything about it. They're in there, quote unquote, to make a ruckus and this and that. They supposedly got your back. They don't care. None of them care. They don't care. I think maybe Thomas Massey and you know, and like I said, Rand Paul is one that I like Rand Paul. He's made some foolish decisions, but guess what? People do make foolish decisions. But I don't believe that his decisions were made because of greed or falling in line with the establishment. Whereas these other people, that's all they're going to do. You can go out in D.C. and go to any prominent restaurant, and you're going to see people from both parties that sit there and wag their fingers at each other on C-SPAN and CNN and whatever, and yell and holler at each other, and you're going to see them sitting there eating together and having drinks in the evening. It's all a farce. It's all put there. It's all just, it's a division tool. It's not what it was supposed to be. And I don't even know what it was supposed to be from the beginning, because it's kind of hard to throw your hat in the ring on something that says all men are created equal when there's no mention of women and we had slavery. So while there was a number of, I think, good ideas when it comes to freedom and individual rights, when they didn't apply to everybody, it's kind of hard to get behind that and sit here and talk about the founding fathers and hold them in you know, high esteem. I think what we need to do, this is just my opinion, is we should use some common sense. I think we need to stop living in the past. We need to forget it all because it's gone. It doesn't fucking change a thing. We can sit here and say, well, your people did this to my people back before I was even born, and I'm going to be upset with you. But no, that doesn't, does that change it? What changes things? What changes things, unfortunately, not really unfortunately, sorry, not sorry, what changes things is talking to other people. What changes things is getting to know individuals in your community. What changes things is helping those in need. What changes things is, changes in our education system. That's a big thing that needs to happen. The way we teach history books, the things that we tell our children. I mean, you got to look at this and you got to wonder about this. And I always think about this because, and I've brought this up before, but you have two little kids and they go in a room to play together, and say you have a little boy that's black and a little boy that's white, and a little boy that's Native American and a little boy that's Chinese or Asian. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. You don't even know what words you can say. I mean, you call somebody Chinese and now all of a sudden it's like you have to say Asian. I mean, there's a difference. I can tell the difference between a Korean individual, a Vietnamese individual, a Chinese individual, a Japanese individual. I mean, one thing for one thing, you could listen to a name. I mean, there is a difference in names from people from different Asian countries. And as a white dude from Wyoming that knows that, I mean, everybody else should know that too. So anyway, I'm just saying, you take 4 different kids from different backgrounds at a young age, and you put them in a playroom, say at a daycare, where there's toys and, books and a little slide, some Fisher-Price toys. You know what those kids are going to do? They're going to play with one another. They're going to have a great time. One of them might get pushed down. The other one will help him up, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't, accident. It's going to be snack time. The kids are going to sit down. They're going to share their food with one another. They're going to laugh. They're not going to think a single other thing. Now, what happens in the course of our lifetime to get to the point where those kids turn 18, 19, maybe younger? You're talking about the same kids that sat there and played together and had a great time. If they're old enough to talk, they probably even asked their parents if they could go play with Tommy or Johnny or who, where did they get it from? They got it from adults. They got it from us. So somewhere along the line, that's all got to change. And and that's not stopping with what government and politics is doing. It's not stopping with what the media does. You know, this one guy played in movies. Oh gosh, what was his name? Oh yeah, first name started with Morgan. What was his last name? Freeman. Oh, Morgan Freeman. Let's break down that word. Freeman. Free man. What did Morgan Freeman say about racism? What did Morgan Freeman say about Black History Month? Does anybody remember that? It was something pretty interesting that the man said. You know, and I consider him to be, I mean, I would say Morgan Freeman's a pretty admirable man, to tell you the truth. I honestly would. I mean, he's not only is he a great actor, but I think he's a very, very intelligent and enlightened individual. I mean, I've got a lot of admiration for him. But he was asked about racism, and he came up with a solution for it. And it came up with his birthday. And I believe he was on, I want to say he was on a little channel called CNN, if I remember right. Let's see if I can find
The whole thing, especially the president and Democrats.
And it was with Don Lemon. I think he might have shut Don Lemon up on this thing, maybe. Let's see.
Are talking about income inequality, and that's basically what, you know, when you talk about the richest 85 people on the planet, right?
Yeah.
It's income inequality. Do you think that's, looking at, you know, what's happening in the news now, is that a good idea?
It's a great idea. It is the greatest idea. We have a much more vibrant society when we don't have such a vast chasm between the haves and the have-nots. We need that middle ground that we call the middle class, the people who buy everything, people who use the products that the rich are creating, if they're creating anything other than wealth, right? So it's what's happening with the Chinese economy right now. They're changing their whole outlook because they need consumers. And without a middle class, you're not going to have consumers. You're not going to have it at the level that we normally would have it.
So can I go back to, because I thought what you said was fascinating, because you called it bull when you said people can't, you know, pull themselves up. Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't
Today?
or not? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Yeah. You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
So I understand you recently had a birthday. You're 27?
No. Got that on 37.
37.
Yeah.
We have a little surprise for you. Can we get it? There you go.
Oh, no. That's more like it.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you for joining us here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, that was just one. But he said if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. And, you know, I tend to agree with him. But, here we go. Here's the one I was actually looking at putting on. This is what I wanted to put on here.
Which month is White History Month? Well, come on, tell me. Well, I'm Jewish. Okay. Which month is Jewish History Month? There isn't one. Oh. Why not? Yeah. Do you want one? No. I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history. How are we going to get rid of racism and stop talking about it?
Boom.
I'm going to stop calling you a white man. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
That's what I've been getting
I know
at.
you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman. You're going to say, well, I know this white guy named Mike Wallace. You know what I'm saying? Uh-huh.
I love seeing that. You know how many times I've said that? You know how many times I've talked to my friends about that concept of saying, hey, at this point we stop calling one another by these descriptors. And I've said this over and over too, and you can go back and you can look at this podcast from the time it started. I've said until we start calling one another by our names, we're not going to ever end all this shit. So that's something to think of right there. Number one, trust your government. I've given you all kinds of reasons. The Patriot Act, there's another reason. That's a great thing. And if you don't recognize the tongue-in-cheek on all this, then I'm sorry. You can't take a joke and you don't understand anything, and I urge you to read a book or do something else. But if you get what I'm saying, then awesome. If you don't, do your homework. I'm going to get off here because I've been going for an hour and a half again. I swear to God, I'm the only guy around I know that talked to himself for an hour and a half. I must have some kind of psychiatric disorder. But I also feel like I'm talking to you, my 3.2 listeners, and I love each and every 3.2 one of you. I'm just kidding. I know there's a few more out there than that. I love each and every one of you. I don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. That's what it's about. Love, compassion, caring about each other, picking each other up, you know, looking out for each other. I'm going to end this thing like I always do. You know, be good or be good at it. In all things, be kind. And do no harm. Bottom line. And I got somebody yelling at a cat outside, so that's nice. Stupid cat. No, I'm racist towards cats. I'm just kidding. Anyway, stay up, people. Be well. Be kind. And hopefully we'll be at this again tomorrow at some point. So I'll take you out with just a little bit of a tune here. I don't know what I'm going to play. Just going to pick a random button, I think. It'll probably be some Brandon Hart. That's usually what I do. So, anyway, here we go. Y'all take care. Hopefully we get Ricardo back on here soon. And then we got a couple other things coming up here that might be kind of a big deal. So stay tuned. I'll let y'all know. Don't buy the Wolf tickets. And trust your government by all means. They care. Later days, Willie Mays.
I've been up all night trying to figure this out. I drank a half a bottle of whiskey, sat down on my couch. Couldn't believe what they were talking about when someone said they found you dead at your house. And how could this be true? I still needed you. I can't believe that I'll never see you. It must have been so bad I can't begin to even try to explain what you've been through. There's no way out, only a way through. You should have stayed here, I could have saved you. Well, I've been up all night trying to figure this out. I wrote a million different words to let you know how I felt. Nothing really sounds special enough, and they don't have the words to tell how it was when you should have stayed here. I could have saved you. There's no mistake that we couldn't work through. Nobody hates you. They want you safe, dude. You left me all on my own. I can't replace you. There's no way out, only a way through. You should have stayed here. I could have saved you. I've been up all night trying to figure this out. I wrote a million different words to let you know how I felt. You should have stayed here. I could have saved you. I'm sorry, brother. I wish I could have done more. I miss you. I will always love you. You will always hold
hold a space in my heart. This song is for you.